Question 1 to 7. Do the following statements agree with the information given in the reading passage? First, damage caused by fire is worse than that caused by flood. This statement is not given because information is not given about this in the reading passage. Second, the flood peaks at almost 1500 cubic meters every 8 years. This statement is false. In paragraph B, floods once raise through the canyon every year. Spring snow from as far away as Wyoming would melt and swell the Colorado River to a flow that averaged around 1500 cubic meters a second. Every 8 years or so, that figure rose to almost 3000 cubic meters. The statement does not give the correct information. 1500 is the average, and in last 8 years, the figure rose to 3000 cubic meters. Third, contribution of sediments delivered by tributaries has little impact. This statement is true. In paragraph C, however, in the 4 decades since the building of Glen Canyon Dam, just upstream of Grand Canyon, the only sediment that it has collected has some tiny, undammed tributaries. Even that has not been much used, as those tributaries are not powerful enough to distribute the sediment in an ecological valuable way. The contribution of the sediments does not do much for the tributaries, because these tributaries are not powerful enough to distribute the sediments in an ecological way by themselves. So the contribution of these sediments is not that significant here. Fourth, decreasing number of chubs is always caused by introducing of trout since mid-20th century. This statement is false. In paragraph D, at first sight, it looked as if the reason that the chub were being eaten by trout introduced for sport fishing in the mid-20th century. But trout and chub coexisted until the Glen Canyon Dam was built. So something else is going on. Steve Gloss of the United States Geological Survey reckons that the chub's decline is a result of their losing their most valuable natural defense, the Colorado's rusty sediment. The chubs were well adapted to poor visibility created by the thick, red water which gave the river its name, and dependent on it to hide from predators. Without the cloudy water, chubs become vulnerable. It was earlier believed that the chubs were being eaten by trout introduced for sport fishing in the mid-20th century, but the reason was that the decline is the result of their losing their most valuable natural resource, the Colorado's rusty sediment. Fifth, it seemed that the artificial flood in 1996 had achieved success partly at the very beginning. This statement is true. In paragraph F, floods were sent down Grand Canyon in 1996 and 2004, and the results were mixed. In 1996, the flood was allowed to go on too long. To start with, all seemed well. The flood waters built up sandbanks and infused the river with sediment. Eventually, however, the continued flow washed most of the sediments out of the canyon. This problem was avoided in 2004, but unfortunately on that occasion, the volume of sand available behind the dam was too low to rebuild the sandbanks. So 1996 was the beginning of this, and 2004 was the second time of the artificial flood. The flood of 1996 went longer, and the flood water made the sandbanks. It brought a lot of sediments to infuse the river, so this statement is true regarding the information of the passage. That it seemed that the artificial flood in 1996 had achieved success partly at the beginning. Sixth, in fact, the yield of artificial flood water is smaller than an average natural flood at present. This statement is true. In paragraph G, at less than 1200 cubic meters a second, this flood is smaller than even an average spring flood, let alone one of the mightier deluges of the past. According to the passage, it is quite clear that artificial floodwater is smaller compared to natural floodwater of the present time. The information about the flood is linked to the previous paragraph, which is F. Seventh, mighty floods drove fast-moving flows with clean and high-quality water. This statement is also not given because the information is not given in the passage about this. Question 8 to 13 complete the summary below. The echo impact of the canyon dam. 8th, floods are people's nightmare. In the past, canyons was raised by flood every year. The snow from far Wyoming would melt in the season of dash and caused a flood flow peak in Colorado River. In paragraph B, floods once raged through the canyon every year. Spring snow from as far away as Wyoming would melt and swell the Colorado River to a flow that averaged around 1500 cubic meters a second. It is clearly mentioned in the paragraph that floods once raged through the canyon every year. So this is something common, and the snow of winter gets melted during spring, which is a cause behind this. So its answer is spring. Would melt in the season of spring and caused a flood. 9th, in the 4 decades after people built the Glen Canyon Dam, it only could gather dash together from tiny undammed tributaries. In paragraph C, however, in the 4 decades since the building of the Glen Canyon Dam just upstream of the Grand Canyon, the only sediment that it has collected has come from tiny undammed tributaries. In these lines, the elements brought by the flood are mentioned. The sediments collected in the Glen Canyon Dam had gathered from tiny undammed tributaries. It is mainly the sediments that brought together with the flood water. It only could gather sediment together from tiny undammed tributaries. Humpback chub population on reduced. Why? 10th, then several species disappeared including Colorado pike minnow, dash, and the round-tailed chub. In paragraph E, in the years since the Glen Canyon Dam was built, several species have vanished together. These include the Colorado pike minnow, the razorback sucker, and the round-tailed chub. It is clearly given, since the Glen Canyon was constructed, many species vanished. One of them is the razorback sucker. The blank of the summary asks about this, as Colorado pike minnow and the round tail is already given. 11th, meanwhile some moved in such as fathead minnows, channel catfish, and dash. In paragraph E, meanwhile alien including fathead minnows, channel catfish, and common crab, which would have been hard put to survive in the savage waters of the undammed canyon, have moved in. Along with the fathead minnow, channel catfish, common crabfish moved in the place of other fishes. Its answer is common crab, because fathead minnows and channel catfish is already given. 12th, the non-stopped flow led to the washing away of the sediment out of the canyon, which possess great threat to chubs because it has dashed away from predators. In paragraph D, Steve Gloss of the United States Geological Survey reckons that chubs decline is the result of their losing their most valuable natural defense, the Colorado's rusty sediment. The chub were well adapted to the poor visibility created by the thick, red water, which gave the river its name, and dependent on it from predators. Without the cloudy water, the chub became vulnerable. The non-stop flow led to the washing away of the sediment out of the canyon, which poses a great threat to chubs because it has poor visibility from predators, and the red thick water of the river was its defense, and they were dependent on it to hide from predators because it has poor visibility. 13th, in addition, the volume of dash available behind the dam was too low to rebuild the bars, and flooding became more serious. In paragraph F, eventually, however, the continued flow washed most of the sediments out of the canyon. This problem was avoided in 2004. But unfortunately, on that occasion, the volume of sand available behind the dam was too low to rebuild the sandbanks. It is given that the volume of the sand available behind the dam was too low to rebuild the bars. As a result, the flooding became more serious.